Hello again, everybody. Brian aka Miss Gurdon's 87 here, and this is Clue on the Sega Genesis. Also released on the Super NES. Developed by Sculpture Software and published by Waddington Games. And this is a game that started as a board game. And I know how long it's been since I played a video game based on a board game. And I think back then I swore I'd never do it again, but I guess now I'm just like, I kind of just threw all the caution to the wind and just said, fuck it, I'm playing whatever game I want. Especially now that I'm more confident in my game selection and my overall stature. No matter how pitiful it is. I mean, my latest videos are only getting like 10 to 15 views at the most. So, but anyway, no, but this is a game that was based off a board game. And the board game was you would play up to 6 players, and each of you played as a character. And somebody in, like, the whole idea is a murder mystery. Somebody was killed in this mansion, and your goal is to find out who done it. And that's where the whole who done it kind of thing is, where it's like, ooh, one of us could have been the killer. Who is it? And how did they do it? And where did they do it? And it also became a very popular movie. Well, I mean, not very popular, but it's a cult classic movie that exists to this day. It was released back in 1983, and it had such excellent people working in that film, such as Tim Curry as Wadsworth the butler, and you also had you had Christopher Lloyd as Professor Plum. You had who is it? Martin Mull as Colonel Mustard. I had to remember, like, I had to remember the Simpsons episode where Martin Mull worked alongside George Carlin as Seth and Munchie, the hippies from that episode. Yeah, if you know. Anyway, so yeah, Martin Mull, Christopher Lloyd, and you had a lot of, memorable names that showed up. Madeline Kahn. You even had Jane Wiedlin from the Go-Go's as the Singing Telegram, who was killed. So that's a whole other can of worms. Like, the movie in and of itself, I can go on, and talk about that. But this is about the game. And the game is pretty straightforward. So I feel like I want to be a little better than amateur. I'd like to go with Gumshoe. Because how the game works, the board game at least, is you would have this little checklist. Like, each person will be given a pad that has the list of who, what, and where, and they would be given a set of cards depending on, and the amount of cards they get is dependent on how many people are playing. And all of those cards that you have in your hand, that's how you know who didn't do it, and what it wasn't done with, and where it wasn't done. So you had to figure out what else was going on. Who has the other cards? If they have the other cards. And throughout this game, you would make suggestions and then later accusations to determine who was the one that killed Mr. Boddy. Boddy. He is the man who was killed in this fucking thing. So, I'll go with the 4-player because that's a good round number. I'm gonna go with Mr. Green. I just wanna. So yeah, it's human. We'll do Miss White as a computer. We'll do Scarlet as computer. And then we'll do another gentleman. We'll do Professor Plum as computer. Alright, let's go. So now, this is where, this is a weird thing, because when you're playing with other players, they're all looking at the same screen. So when you press the button to show your cards, they're supposed to look away. They're not supposed to see what cards you have, because in real life, you have the cards in your hand. No one can see what cards. But these are the cards that were given to me, so this is what we know is not the answer that's hidden in the little envelope that you put in the middle of the board. So, okay, so we know it wasn't done with the candlestick, it wasn't done with the lead pipe, it wasn't done in the billiard room, and it wasn't done with the revolver. So that cuts out like half the fucking weapons in only one room. So now we just have to worry about what everybody else has. Alright, so let's go. So this is just like all the other board game, video games that were released back in the early to mid 90s, you know, like Clue, Monopoly, shit like that. Alright, so that's my turn. 3. So the whole game is you roll a die up to 6 spaces because it's a 6-sided die. And when you go into a room, that's where you could, you know, make an accusation, where you could suggest that somebody did it in this room with whatever weapon, and you choose who that person and weapon was. So I got a 6, so now I don't know if it was in the ballroom. So now I get to go in here and find out. So I don't know who could have done it. It could have been anybody. Could have been Colonel Mustard, could have been Professor Plum, Miss White. I'm gonna guess Mrs. White. And I know it's not the revolver, the candlestick, or the lead pipe. So I'm gonna guess it was the knife. It's a fair suggestion. So now we get this little scene that tells us Mrs. White was not in the ballroom. So, okay. So this is where you'd be, you know, keeping it in your mind. It's like, okay, so if it ends up happening in the ballroom, it wasn't Mrs. White. But if the culprit was Mrs. White, it's not in the ballroom. So you kind of have to keep that in your mind and, you know, make a note of it on your little pad as you go. So obviously, so you have 3 options. First one is end the turn and hand it off to the next player. Cards is obviously looking at your cards, which, as we saw, is candlestick, lead pipe, billiard room, revolver. I don't know what's going on with my... I think I have to double check my settings on this controller, because whenever I'm holding one of these buttons, everything just like goes super fast. Accusation is where you basically make your final judgment. And if you're wrong, you lose. If you're right, you win. So we're not about to do that. All right, Plum, go. So now Plum is in the study. He's going to say it was him with the wrench. Ah. Well, Plumber's going to plumb. The wrench was not in the study, so there we go. See, that's where he finds out he was wrong. And since he didn't accuse anybody else, nobody else has to go over there. So now Scarlett's in a lounge. Gonna suggest Plum with the rope. That's another weapon that could have been the culprit. Well, there's Miss Scarlett. She was in the lounge. But we don't learn anything about the weapon. We just learned that she was in the lounge. So now, a suggestion is when you're in a room and you want to bring somebody over. So, I'm being brought over with the candlestick, and I could tell you that it wasn't me with the candlestick, because I have the candlestick. Nobody was in the ballroom. Okay, so that's where you'd be like, okay, ballroom's out of the question. Nobody was in the ballroom. That's not where this whole thing goes. So now, I roll the dice. I hope to God I can actually get over to someplace. Ah, Professor Plum is going to suggest. Gonna say him again. Lead pipe. It's not lead pipe. I have the lead pipe. But let's see if this opens the door for anything else. He did not have the lead pipe. I could have told you that. See, that's when you get into the higher difficulties, that's when you find, like, they tell you more about, like, information that doesn't really make a difference to your thought process. You know, like what you're thinking of as you go through. But it could help out whoever else you're playing against. Whether it's real life people when you have the game board in front of you and you got the pad in your hand and you're crossing off things that aren't right, or you're checking off things that are right, or you're playing a fucking video game just like this. I mean, that's how these board game, you know, video game adaptations work. Oh, look at that nice one. Oh, yeah, sure. That's really gonna get me in the fucking conservatory. God, these games. Well, Miss Scarlett's about to go into the dining room. Let's see who she's gonna suggest. Mrs. Peacock? Okay, wrench. Hey, that could happen. Plum didn't have the wrench. There's the dining room. Nobody was in the dining room. Okay, so dining room is out. Dining room and lounge are out. Or was it ballroom? Fuck, I don't even remember. God damn, see, that's the problem with these kind of games. You have to really keep your mind in the game when it comes to this sort of thing. You gotta... That's why a lot of people hate games where you have to actually bring out, like, a fucking your own pad and paper or a notebook or a post-it note and start writing things down. Okay, so as we established, I don't have any person who couldn't have done it in my cards. So it could have been me. I'll just say me. Okay, so I already know it's not the candlestick, revolver, or the pipe. So I'll say it was me with the wrench. Why not? Maybe this might narrow it down a little bit. Oh, there's Miss Peacock. She was in the conservatory. Okay, let's keep an eye on that. Obviously, I'm not in a position to make an accusation. I already know my cards, so turn over. Alright, Plum, what are you going to do? You going to go into the dining room? No, you're going into the lounge? Okay, who do you think was? Miss Scarlett? With the wrench? Okay. Well, neither Miss Scarlett or the wrench has been established. Alright, so there's the lounge. The wrench was in the lounge. Okay, so wrench in the lounge. Keep that in mind. That could be, if you find out who had the wrench, that could be... Oh, going straight to the interrogation. Gonna say, I believe it was Miss Scarlett with the wrench in the lounge. Well, wrench in the lounge, it just comes down to whether or not Miss Scarlett actually had the wrench. The lounge was quite warm. It was cozy enough for a nap. A long nap. Miss Scarlett laughed as she fixed her makeup and hair. She definitely hefted the wrench. That's an interesting possible scenario. So that kind of, if I remember correctly, that basically gives it away. That tells you that's the result. Because if it wasn't right, there'd be a message that tells you, oh, you might be wrong. You should think about that. The lounge was quite warm. It was cozy enough for a nap. A long nap. Miss Scarlett laughed as she fixed her makeup and hair. She definitely hefted the wrench. She had been hurt enough. And... Well, I won. I figured it out. I cracked the case. So she basically told on herself here. So yeah, she won. See, look at that. That's how bullshit this game is. That's why it's more fun if you play with somebody else. Alright, so I just wanted to get this one out of the way to show you the kind of games that there are when it comes to video games based off of board games. I already did it once with the Game of Life on PlayStation, and from the view count, obviously, none of y'all liked it, so why should you like this one either? I just wanted to get this out of the way. So as always, it's Brian E, aka MissGrims87, saying thank you all for watching, thank you all for tuning in, thank you all for playing along, even though it's just more board game bullshit. You know, I think I ought to change the name. The playlist that had the Game of Life and all that, I called it Board Game Bonanza. I might as well just call it Board Game Bullshit, because none of you guys give a shit about this anyway. And I'm really thinking I shouldn't either. For the sake of all of us, I think this might be where I just end it. Maybe I'll just go back to playing video games based on game shows. Those tend to be more fun. You know, Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, Double Dare, shit like that. Alright, so that's gonna do it for this one. Y'all take care now, and I will be